At this time, I will call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone here this evening. We do have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? If not, we'll operate under that agenda. The first item then would be to consider the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting that was last held March 28, 2023. The council does have a copy of the minutes. Are there any corrections to those minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim to approve the minutes as they have been presented. We'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 2 is a public hearing. There's a public hearing on the vacation of utility easements in Stonebridge Estates. So we'll have the public hearing on the resolution that would grant the petition to vacate the utility easement, and then following the conclusion of the public hearing, we will consider the resolution. So I'll call on Jason Anderson, Director of Public Works and City Engineer, to conduct this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. Included in the packet, you should have a drawing that identifies the area that we're talking about tonight. We received a signed petition for vacation of the utility easements on Lot 9 and Lot 10 of Block 8 in Stonebridge Estates Edition. Purpose for the vacation is to construct a dwelling and then also reconfigure lots 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we have sent the notice out to all the utilities in our community and asked for any input. We received no concerns from anybody regarding the vacation of the easement. Property owner will work with MMU to define a new easement along one of the newly defined property lines for them. So staff would recommend that we move forward with the vacation, and we can answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Are there questions as part of the public hearing, either from the council or from members of the audience? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Jim, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll now consider the resolution that would vacate the easement. Are there questions about the resolution?
I move the resolution.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 3 is also a public hearing. This is a public hearing on the General Obligation Bond Series 2023A. So once again, we'll have a public hearing, and then following the conclusion of the public hearing, we'll consider the resolution that would approve the property tax abatement to finance certain public improvements in the city. So to conduct this public hearing and to introduce it, I will call on E.J. Moberg, our Director of Administrative Services. E.J.?
Thank you. So the first one here tonight is, as you mentioned, for the property tax abatement. This is one that was called for via the last meeting and then was published. The list of parcels that was published does include a parcel owned by a city council member. There is no public benefit and the like, so everyone will pay the taxes throughout the city accordingly. So it's not something that the council member is getting any kind of special benefit. So, you know, the council member can vote and there's no other special requirements for that. Would you agree with that, Pam?
Yes, there's no direct financial benefit, so.
So this is for $600,000 of tax abatement bonds to finance the public improvement projects. Currently planned for a parking lot and then 3 different projects at parks. If we get as far as a resolution, it would need to be passed by a majority vote. With us tonight is Michaela Hewitt from Baker Tilly, who has a little short presentation she'd like to make, I believe, regarding the tax abatement bonds. and then we could do the public hearing in conjunction with that.
Okay, thank you, EJ, and welcome, Michaela.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Again, here to provide a quick overview on tax abatement financing as it relates to the issuance of the city's 2023 A bonds. Next slide, please. So a tax abatement financing, for those that may not be familiar with the tool, it is authorized under Minnesota Statutes 469, and it allows cities to make specific improvements, including construction of certain projects that can be financed either internally or through the issuance of bonds. Cities are able to identify specific properties that are included within the tax abatement, and the taxes generated from those properties are what's used to pay the either the internal loan or the bonds. In this case, we are looking at bonds. Eligible uses for tax abatement include, you'll see listed here, improvements to private property, public infrastructure, and then to acquire, construct, or improve public facilities, including parks, recreational facilities, and community centers. So it is quite flexible tool. And again, it's the authority for which we're able to finance the improvements. We're looking at up to $600,000 that would be issued through the general obligation tax abatement bonds. And again, the proceeds would be used to finance improvements to the various parks and parking lots listed on this slide. The annual debt service payments would be made from the annual tax abatement levies from the identified properties. And these would be only the city's share of taxes on those properties. Prior to using tax abatement, there is a statutory requirement that the city makes the finding that the benefits of the proposed abatement at least equal the costs of the abatement, and that the project financing is in the public interest. You'll see listed here. One of those is to provide or help acquire or construct public facilities, and that is again the public benefit for this tax abatement tool. A little bit on again, it's defined in Minnesota Statutes 469. It is not an actual abatement. All the identified properties still pay all of their taxes as usual. The identified parcels, the taxes are captured and redirected to pay the debt service on the bonds. And each year there would be an annual levy that's equal to the amount of the debt service on the bonds. The process and why we're here tonight, it requires the public hearing. So it's adopted by a resolution at the notice meeting, and the notice is more than 10 days and less than 30. So the notice was published 11 days prior to the public hearing. Again, the process does not require the property owner consent because there is no differentiation for the properties that are included within the abatement. The abatement resolution for your consideration tonight includes the terms of the abatement, which would include the amount up to $600,000, the length, which is 10 years, and then again to construct and improve the public facilities. And the last piece, for those that may be familiar with TIF, there is no but-for test. So this is strictly a public financing tool to finance the identified improvements. The last piece on this, the maximum duration, and we're below that, is 15 years if you had all three taxing entities participate, or 20 years if one or two. No back-to-back abatements. That means that any properties that are included within a tax abatement, you must have 8 years passes before that same parcel can be within a new tax abatement. And you cannot overlap tax abatement with tax increment financing. So I think with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have or open it up for public comment.
Thank you, Michaela. First off, any questions for Michaela, as long as she's at the microphone? If not, thank you. We'll open up for any general input or questions from either the council or members of the audience that are present at this public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
By Craig, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Jim to close the public hearing. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll now consider the resolution that would approve the property tax abatement to certain abatement to certain public improvements in the city. Are there questions about the resolution? If not, is there a motion?
So move.
Motion by Jim, is there a second?
I'm Craig.
I'll second it, though.
Motion by Craig, seconded, and I heard you say, seconded by John, and again, apologies for mixing
That's all
you
right.
guys up, so.
I think it'd be a privilege.
There's discussion on the motion. If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 4 is also a public hearing. This is a public hearing on general obligation bonds, Series 2023A. We will conduct a public hearing and then follow the public hearing. Once again, we'll consider the resolution on the 5-year street reconstruction plan and the issuance of the general obligation street reconstruction bonds. I'll call once again on E.J. Moberg, Director of Administrative Services, to conduct this public hearing.
Thank you. So similar to the last one, this was called for at the last meeting for a public hearing tonight. This was also published 11 days in advance. This one is to allow a maximum principal amount of $3,700,000 for the project or for these bonds, for the street reconstruction bonds. This deals with the North Third and West Lyon project. This voting is a little different in that this must be approved by a vote of 2/3 majority of the members of the governing body present at a meeting following a public hearing. So this is a little more in that we have to have at least 2/3 of the members present that would vote for this one. Similar to the last council item, Michaela is still here to kind of go through street reconstruction bonds. I thought it'd be helpful with the newer council members, especially.
Thank you, Michaela. Or thank you, E.J., and welcome once again, Michaela.
Thank you. I'll keep this simple on the street reconstruction portion of the bond issuance. So again, it's under Minnesota statutes 475.58 subdivision 3. What it is the under that statute, the city is required to establish a 5-year plan for reconstruction or overlay of streets in the city. And the street reconstruction plan for this, related to this, is for the years 2023 through 2027. That reconstruction plan includes a description of the identified streets and estimated costs for the improvements over the 5-year period. Pursuant to the street reconstruction plan, the city has the authority to issue general obligation bonds to finance the cost of the activities that are described in the plan. There are eligible uses for street reconstruction bonds. They're listed here, including street reconstruction, incidental utility replacement, relocation, additional if there's bike lanes, sidewalks, paths, other improvements related to it, any realignments, or other modifications related to it, but it does not include the widening or certain improvements. So there are specific improvements that can be identified and financed with street reconstruction bonds. So the project financing that's proposed tonight is up to $3.7 million. Again, the proceeds would be used to finance a portion of the cost described in that street reconstruction plan relating to the North 3rd Street, West Lyon Street downtown reconstruction project. The process for considering it is tonight, holding the public hearing on the plan and the intent to issue the bonds. Again, the notice was published 11 days ago, and the requirement is at least 10 days, and actually less than 28 days, so that's a typo, but we're within that period of time. And then after that point, the 30-day reverse referendum would begin tomorrow, and then the adopting resolution defines the maximum project cost amount of the $3.7 million. And again, the purpose of this is to provide the authority for issuing the bonds in the upcoming calendar. So I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you, Michaela. Questions? If not, thank you, and we'll open up for any questions or public comment, either from the council or from members of the audience as part of this public hearing. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close.
Motion by Amanda, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll now consider the resolution that would approve the 5-year reconstruction plan and the issuance of the general obligation street reconstruction bonds. Questions about the resolution?
I move the resolution.
Motion by Craig,
Second.
seconded by John. Discussion?
The only thing I'd like to add in the discussion is this doesn't necessarily lock us in 2024. Correct in saying that, right? For our reconstruction that we have on here?
Well, this is for North,
No, third, yeah, but you said
Yeah.
5-year. Maybe I heard the question wrong.
you
No,
want-
based on your question, this does not lock us into the projects listed in any given year.
Thank you.
right.
That answers my
Just
question.
saying that as of today, this is our plan.
Yep, this is just a plan. That answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move to agenda item number 5, consider the award of bids for the new picnic pavilion at the amateur sports complex. I'll call on Preston Stensrud with our Parks Department to present this agenda item. Preston?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you have bids that were received for construction of a new picnic shelter and storage area out at the amateur sports complex. That'll really be the final phase of the plan for out there that from construction in 2015 and 16. If you guys are familiar with the area, it'll go just south of the playground. Or north of the concession stand. There's kind of a triangular shaped area out there. And it would also have 8-foot walkways connecting back to the playground and then over to the second field dugout area, kind of over by the flagpole, just to kind of connect all the walks together for accessibility too. And then it would, huge need out there. We get asked time and time again on, thanks, Stephen. So kind of in that big open area. Just right up here, but closer to the batting cage, so it's not in line of foul balls and stuff like that. But we get asked time and time again, like I was saying, for additional shade. So this will provide that for teams that are out there in the June and July sun, waiting between games. It'll also help alleviate some congestion under the concession area because right now that is the only shade. So it'll have picnic tables and then also be another facility that'd be able to be rented for private gatherings, whether it's a birthday party or family reunion type thing with the playground right there. I think that'll be really popular. So we had 170,000 in the CIP, so it came in just about 1,700 or a little less than that over budget or less than 1%. Doom and Kuipers was the low bid, and all general contractors were local. And we'd recommend Doom and Kuipers to be awarded the project. He didn't give a firm date, but said midsummer. October 1st is the completion date. But I think, there's no plumbing or anything, sewer, anything like that. So I think once they start, it'll go pretty quick. And if you guys are familiar with the Patriot Park Shelter House, it's basically the same exact setup as that, except for the 2 bathrooms will just be one big garage area with a garage door facing west towards the arena. That'll offset some storage needs there. And now the mower and the ball pro and chalk and everything stored over there. That's taking up room and it's not really convenient for personnel either. So kind of serves multiple purposes. So with that, I'd take any questions, but otherwise I'd recommend to approve the construction to Doom and Kuipers. So.
Thank you, Preston. And this was part of the original plan for that complex. So
Yep.
this is really the last component of that plan.
Yep.
Questions for Preston?
I have a quick question, Preston. I know I've said it about budgets, but this is a small amount, so I have to ask, do you have a place in your current park budget to come up with the over $1,600 some dollars?
Yeah, I mean, if we can, there's some revenues that are created from out there that we could use. I'm not sure how that ties into the CIP. Maybe EJ can answer that with funding and transferring and stuff like that, if it's
Well, and
a
I
hassle or
support
not.
it.
But
Yeah, it's
so-
less than 1%. I've said that over budget, we need to really, well, I don't need to preach to the choir anymore. Less than 1%, I think that this is something we can swallow. If you can find some place to find, obviously in your budget someplace, because we want to try to keep our budget under, but I do support this finishes this project and makes a nice facility out there.
That can work internally with what's the best way to do it.
Perfect.
so.
Other questions for Preston?
Yeah, I have a question. Preston, how much revenue do you think that you'll get renting out the facility?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's $50. There's 5-hour increments, so it's a 10 a.m. to 5 and a 5 to 10. On weekends, it'd be hard maybe to rent if there's tournaments.
Yeah.
But I know like Patriot Park, I don't know numbers, but it's rented often.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm going to guess maybe 50 rentals
Okay.
a season. So
I would guess the rentals actually, because you said you rent it for $50. The cost, they take the garbage out. It's more of a service
Yeah.
to the community.
Yep. It creates a little revenue,
And it's a good
but
service.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not service we need to provide with these facilities.
yep.
Other questions? If not, thank you, Preston. I would entertain a motion.
I move approval.
I'd second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 6, consider the award of bids, the authorization to purchase a sprayer for the Parks Department from Midwest Machinery Company of Hastings, Minnesota, and then declare the 1995 sprayer as surplus equipment. Once again, from the Parks Department, Preston Century.
All right. Thanks again, Mayor and Council. Tonight, you have an offer from Midwest Machinery. It's the state contract pricing. They are the only John Deere dealer allowed to sell this piece of equipment in the state of Minnesota. We did look at other vendors, specifically Toro, which is the only one that makes a comparable product. It is about $20,000 higher in cost, but I didn't actually solicit a bid from them since this was a state contract price. It's replacing the 2013. It's the exact same model, size, everything, which that would be passed down to Public Works. And then the 1995 would be declared surplus and sold on auction once the new unit arrives, which we've been told likely won't be till late fall, early winter. So we won't use it this season. It'll be in to next season, or likely would be put away, or maybe we won't even get until 2024. When we met with Equipment Review in January, I think it was, we knew this was in the CIP, but it was not available. And then about 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago, I was informed that there's a window of opportunity to place the order, although it's not readily available because it's going to take quite some time to get. However, from doing the budget in 2022 to now, John Deere had a pricing increase, hence the kind of little bit of the shortfall on the budget there of the $5,500 or so dollars. So that's state contract price. There's really no negotiating or anything we can do on that. So I would still recommend approval, just for the fact that next year this might see another 10% cost increase, maybe more, maybe it's hard to predict. And then also, the sprayer we sell, we don't know what we'll get on auction. However, the auctions when we've been selling equipment have been favorable. We were offered $500 in trade, and I'm confident we'll get more than that. But will we get 1,000 or 5,000? I have no idea. And then also, I know, like I said, on the overage, we did have one piece of equipment that we already purchased this year that came in about $2,400 or $2,500 under budget. So that kind of helps offset about half of that difference. But we're still a little bit short, but it's kind of specialty equipment, and just with the volatility in the market and stuff, we didn't know where it's going to be, but now we got pricing. That's kind of where we're at. So.
And payment will not occur until delivery, which may not even be this year.
Which may not even be this year. I did try and reach out to them today, but I didn't hear back. Because if, we can get it in December, all of our stuff's kind of put away in storage. We really won't need it until April of next year, and whether they're fine with holding it and we just pay it all next year, or pay them our budgeted amount this year and then pay the difference next year when they deliver. We're trying to work that out, but I didn't hear back from him today. So we have some options if we need to go that route. I just don't know exactly what he's comfortable doing. So.
And the warranty service is happening at any John Deere dealer.
Yep. The warranty would be at any. It's just they're the only licensed dealer to sell turf equipment. So.
Okay. Questions?
Comment, and Preston and I discussed this morning to pretty good detail about what the options are. A couple other factors. The 2013 had an offer of, I believe, $16,000 or $17,000 as a trade. So if we didn't hold that equipment and pass it down to street department or public works, this wouldn't be over budget. It would be significantly under budget. There's a value to pushing that down. And Preston and I talked about the significance of this piece of equipment with automatic rate control and a number of other things that are safety factors in applying chemical. And this is typically applying it in our parks areas where we have encouraging public contact to the areas that are sprayed. And I think that it's not that much more technical than the 13. I mean, the 13 has those same those same options for the most part, other than the onboard mixing that you added. I think it's what, $2,500 is the option for chemical induction.
Yep.
Yeah, instead of tank blending. Preston and I talked a lot about the details because I agree with Councilman Lozinski that, this year, everything seems to be coming in over our budgeted estimates, and we can't approve everything that comes in over budget because we know where that's going to put us budget-wise. I like the idea of trying to deal with the dealer to split the payments out and build this into next year's budget also, for that difference. The other option would be to deny the bid and hope that we don't have a huge increase, carry the funds over, and then approve it again next year for that if we can get it. I think there was a pretty narrow window open, and I understand that there's not going to be a surplus of these available. So I'm a little bit leery of turning that away because while the 13 would still work fairly well for what we need to do, it may not work well for what Preston needs to do in parks and what Dean needs on the Public Works Department. So I'm a little bit reluctant to rely on the 95 yet for what happens. And that one is really old technology and probably not the most reliable piece. So I'm really kind of drawn, like I told Preston, I think I'm very much in favor of this if we're confident that we can split those out. I don't like getting tricky with how we find money or move money around. If it needs to come through, I think, from the departments where we're having the questions. So, kind of looks to me like we're really looking at about $3,000 that we need to find here to make this work. So I guess I'm in favor of this if EJ and Preston are confident that somehow, some way we can work this with the dealer or find it within that budget somewhere to make it fit. I think that it's worthy doing it. But again, I still, I'm leaning pretty heavily to not approving things that are over budget. I guess I didn't answer anything. I just sat here and stated it, but I really struggle with this, and I appreciate the work that Preston's done trying to put this together. I wish the dealer salesman would have gotten back to you and given you a better idea what's going to happen.
Any other questions for Preston?
Well, I have a question more for EJ on this. If we would, because we don't take delivery of this till December, January, February of next year, and we already have I don't have my glasses, I should put them on, 59,000 budgeted for this. Preston builds in 6,000 to his budget next year. I mean, it'd be the same cost if we purchase it next year, if you put in your budget for 65,000 next year. Is that something, since we bought you a nice new budget program, that we can work into your budget program? So basically, I'd rather know how to pay for this before we order it. I think I made that very clear earlier this year. And if we, budget it next year, well, then we can order it and talk to that. Because I agree with you, Preston. Why? Because we take it in December, our warranty starts in December, correct? Mm-hmm. So we really don't want to take this thing until we can use it in April anyway. Because why store it for 6 months and lose 6 months of warranty watching it snow on it? Yep. So that'd be something, EJ, could we work that through the budget system?
My suggestion to Preston was that to bring it forward, even though it was over, because of the fact that we could work it in, with us not taking possession for possibly 7 months or more, The new year will almost be here. So if you want us to budget the difference towards next year, again, just as a refresher, there was $300,000 budgeted this year for the capital equipment fund levy. So this is just one piece of that. The net amount is what we actually budgeted for this was 58.5 because we had planned on $1,000 for trade. So instead of 59.5, it was 58.5 was the net that was there for this piece. But there are a number of items that have not been ordered or purchased yet, so we don't know where those could come in. We might be able to hit this without any issues anyway and stay under the $300,000. I feel comfortable, especially with the long delay to get it. Again, if we have a 10% price increase next year and there's still a 7-month delay in ordering, then you're pretty much knocking out of next season of parks being able to use it as well.
Well, and Craig and I talked about this earlier. The price isn't going to go down.
Right.
The price of equipment does not go down. It may level out. It may go up small, but I can just about guarantee you it will not get less than $65,167.
Right.
It just doesn't go down. So I'm not opposed. If we can figure out a way to come up with the 6,000, either when come with next year's budget or maybe we'll have surplus this year, I'm not opposed to ordering because we know how to pay for it. And like I said, it's not going to go down in price for next year, maybe 70,000 next year. So but that's my 2 cents.
The other thought on this too is the use of the piece of equipment, not only for the Parks Department, but for the Street Department. And we're really talking about the 2025 usage and where both pieces of equipment would be used. And both the Street Department and the Parks Department have a fairly short window of time where, it's either appropriate, the right time of year to do this, or the weather conditions and the wind and perhaps the moisture allow for both public ways and the parks to have the application and the spraying done. So this probably is more of a longer term. This isn't a this year piece of equipment. This is a longer term planning for both the streets, public ways, and the Parks Department.
I have one more quick question for you, Preston. Because you said it's a short window to order this. What's the chance that you call them up tomorrow and they say, luck? I mean, that's a possibility too, isn't it?
Yeah, I would guess you'd probably still be able to get it. It's just that maybe the window got longer, maybe. I mean, they aren't getting shorter on anything. Our mowers, we used to be able to get in 4 to 6 weeks, and now we're getting them 6 to 8 months. It's getting longer and longer. The wide area mower is over a year, so just everything seems like it's getting delayed. They'll take your order, it just might get pushed back in the line. So,
but if it takes them 9 months, they're going to hold. This is the price they're going to hold.
Yep.
They're not
Because
going
it's
to
a
come back in December.
state
It
contract.
expires
so.
April 28th.
So.
Okay.
Any other questions for Preston? If not, you have the recommendation. I'd entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Motion by Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Thank you, Preston.
Thanks, Preston.
We'll move then to the consent agenda. We'll bring the items up on the screen that are on the consent agenda this evening. And they include, consider the request from Marshall Downtown Business Association for Crazy Days, July 20th, 2023. Introduction of the amendments to Chapter 2, Article 2-6, Division 2-6-11, the Adult Community Center City of Marshall Ordinance. The introduction of the ordinance amending Section 86-2030 or 230 required the required number of spaces and call for a public hearing, and then consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member wants removed for separate discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Jim,
I'll second.
second by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Agenda item number 11, the property acquisition for the relocation of the Aquatic Center. To start this agenda item, I'll call on Sharon Hansen, City Administrator.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. and council members. We've had several discussions about an alternate location for the aquatic center. And the last time we've talked with this council was I think it was late December. We had a work session on aquatic center, and we invited the new council members who were elected to be present for that. We have been working with a representative from Schwann's on the language and the opportunity to purchase this particular property that's shown on the screen. We have also utilized our land use attorney, Dennis Simpson, to work on the language. And he has also ensured that there are several conditions in the agreement. As we all know, we are awaiting legislative action on our sales tax request, and we also need to have local voter referendum approval, which are just two of the conditions. So I know that Attorney Simpson can certainly add more about the specific language in the agreement, and he may want to offer some additional comments.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Dennis, welcome.
In front of you, you see outlined in orange. That's the area to be purchased. It's a little larger than when we first started discussing it. The first two long, wide lots is what was on the initial proposal. Schwann's has come back and they've added that. I believe you may have said it's a vacated street, First Street, I believe it was. That's the vacated. That would be added. That would be additional property. It equals about 5 acres. Right now, there's a parking lot on the east side. There's a large pile of snow also right on that right now, but that's quickly going away. And then the rest is all green space. Right down between the middle there is a platted but undeveloped alleyway. That narrow strip down the middle is already owned by the city of Marshall. So the proposal would be to purchase that property for the price of $468,000, but it is contingent upon legislative approval asking or granting the city the right to seek a vote to approve or continue the existing local sales tax, and then that would have to be approved by the citizens of Marshall. So all of that, it's my understanding, if we do get approval, that would occur in early November would be the vote. Is that correct, Mayor? The
First
timing?
Tuesday of November.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the actual closing, the purchase would not occur till after those events, so on or before December 15th of this year. City would have the right to go on there to do whatever exploration if they need to do soil testing, things like that, have the permission to do that. And then also you see, just as you look at the map on the right side, there is a large parking lot. It's a private parking lot now owned by Shares, but by Schwann's Shared Services. We'd work out an agreement wherein the city would have the right to have patrons attending the aquatic center park there, use that private parking lot. Right now, the proposal is that the city would be responsible for all future maintenance, including snow removal, repairs. Those are things yet to be discussed. So that's part of the contingencies. Agree to a lease agreement, get legislative and local voter approval. If none of those happen, then the contingencies are not met and you do not have to buy the property. So getting a successful agreement on the parking lot would also be the contingent? Yes. So if the referendum came through, we negotiated and we failed to achieve that agreement, that would also void our obligation to purchase? Correct, but I think that would look kind of bad. Sure. Yeah, no, I
mean, if we got
understand,
local
but we'd be
approval, yeah.
in
But
bad
it
shape
is
if we didn't have parking.
Yes, yeah.
The discussion though with and I'm sorry if I could jump in here, is that okay? This discussion with Schwann's about that parking lot is that they would retain the ownership of it.
Yes.
They would continue to pay the property taxes on it because they do the ownership.
Yeah.
And the reason they want to retain the ownership is the unknown about the future. You know, will they need that parking in the future? You know, during times of the year.
Right.
And the discussion about the maintenance and specifically snow removal really revolved around pavement preservation. And there's some engineers that believe that leaving the snow on there all winter long probably isn't very good for the asphalt anyway. So that's part of that future discussion. So.
And we're not plowing new ground with that. There has been a private use of public use of private parking lot adjacent to the Mercantile Building when Schwann's owned that gravel parking lot. There is an agreement out there, so we're going to kind of use that as a template to build off of. And I think the YMCA has a similar agreement with them on part of the eastern part of that lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right, there,
Okay.
there's that opportunity.
Good.
So right now, there's money in the budget to buy the property. However, if we don't get permission to obtain money to build the aquatic center, then we don't need to buy it. So this is the first of the contingencies. City Council has to approve the agreement, then we have the written agreement in place obligating the seller to sell, buyer to buy if we meet the contingencies. So it'd be the recommendation for the council to approve the purchase so we can start getting title work done, get started with the exploration of the site if needed.
Sharon, you had a comment?
And the mayor and Dennis can comment on this, but when we last met with Schwann's, I don't think we're going to wait until the end to get the long-term lease agreement for the parking lot. The Schwann's wasn't quite ready in hand with that particular language, but I think they wanted to get moving on that as well.
Correct.
And I
So do we.
know that you're going to be working with them on and getting that. So that could be something we bring back to the council early on and not wait until the end.
Good. Other questions for Dennis?
I move we approve the moving forward on the real property acquisition agreement.
Motion by Craig,
Second that.
seconded by C. Discussion?
Thanks, Dennis.
If there's no discussion, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Once again, thank you, Dennis. We'll move then to agenda item number 12, the wastewater facility MPDES permit update and authorize the execution of the chloride variance application to the MPCA. I'll call on, are you going to start this, Jason, or should we call it directly on Scott? So I'll call on Scott Truittson, are you going to take this? Our superintendent of our wastewater plant. Scott? And so you can start and then.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have quite a bit of information to go over tonight, so please feel free to ask questions at any time. I have Scott Prisbilla with me, our Assistant Superintendent, too. We're going to kind of both read through the PowerPoint. Go ahead to the next slide. A little background, our existing permit, the current National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, the NPDES permit, expired on May 31st of 2019. NPDES permits are a 5-year term. Upon expiration, the old permit remains in effect until a new permit is issued. The MPCA reviews current water quality standards and implements changes in permit limits during this time. Permit renewal. On April 1st of last year, 2022, the city received our new limits notification letter from the MPCA. Since then, the city has had several meetings with the MPCA, Minnesota Environmental Science and Economic Review Board, MESRB, attorneys, and consultants in Bolton and Mink to address the issues with the proposed limits and testing requirements. Some of the issues that we have are, first one is a copper limit, total dissolved solids, TDS, sulfate limit, phosphorus limit, and chloride limit. Copper, we received a schedule of compliance, an SOC, in the 2014 permit. The end of the SOC is April 1st of 2024. It was determined the copper was from plumbing in the distribution system. Corrosion control at the MMU water plant has taken care of this issue. The city has not had an exceedance since receiving the limit. TDS, total dissolved solids. This is a new limit for this permit. Since the MMU water treatment plant enhancement softening project went online, the city hasn't had an exceedance from the proposed new limit. Through discussion with the MPCA, they have withdrawn the new limit. Sulfates. The new limit will be 769 milligrams per liter monthly average with a 991 milligram liter daily maximum. Sulfates in the groundwater in our area are high. Marshall's drinking water last month contained 643 milligrams per liter of sulfate. Industry in Marshall adds to our sulfate levels in the wastewater. So source reduction is the only way to meet the limit at the wastewater treatment facility. This is a graph of the sulfate concentrations. At the very bottom, the orange line, that's the 760 milligram per liter monthly average we have to reach. And then the gray line above that, that is what the daily max can be. As you can see, we've been over that for quite some time.
Phosphorus. The city has had a seasonal mass limit for phosphorus for some time. The city currently treats with ferric chloride to meet that phosphorus limit. With the new permit, we're going to see a more stringent limit June through September. And the reason for that is we have a bigger impact on the Redwood River during low flow conditions. So that's why they're ratcheting us down a bit. Ferric chloride that we use to remove the phosphorus adds to our chloride problem. Aluminum sulfate is another chemical that can be used for phosphorus removal. It would work well, but that would add to our sulfate problem. So that may or may not be an option. Biological phosphorus removal is another way that we could remove the phosphorus. There's high capital and O&M costs. And then our industrial load is fluctuates, and that can be hard to operate that kind of system. We do have alternatives that we can use to ferric chloride. Those have been very cost prohibitive, but with the increases we've been seeing in our ferric costs, they're becoming more attractive. And some of them do not have a chloride contribution, and others we would have less of a contribution with them. We currently can meet the proposed limits that they're proposing, but the filters that we have, the effluent filters, they were installed in 2002. They were not designed to remove chemical sludge, solids that's in the water that has the phosphorus in it. And so those will be a problem for us. Eventually they will need to be replaced with different types of filters that we would be able to meet the limits with. For the phosphorus, we're requesting a 10-year schedule of compliance from the MPCA to provide more time to identify just what processes we would need to improve so we can consistently be in compliance with that new limit. Chlorides, as you know, we've been working with chlorides for 10 years now, or almost 10 years. The river has to be at 230, and if not, they can, the aquatic ecosystem will suffer. Chloride comes from the regeneration of ion exchange water softeners, home softeners, the salt that is added to them. Local industries also add chlorides through their processes. Currently, the only technology for removing chlorides at the wastewater facility is reverse osmosis, and that is economically infeasible. 10 years ago, when we got the permit, we were averaging 667 milligrams per liter going into the river. Over the last year, that discharge has dropped down to an average of 386. The new limit is 261 for the monthly average and a 302 milligram per liter daily maximum. If the city does not comply with these limits by April 1 of 24, it will be in violation of the NPDES permit and subject to fines. Because ferric chloride is used for phosphorus removal, like I said earlier at the facility, there typically is an additional 50 milligrams per liter added to the chloride levels that is discharged. Because the 261 limit is a concentration limit and not a mass limit, chloride concentration is reduced when higher flows are experienced during rain events due to inflow and infiltration. During dry periods, such as most of 2022, dilution is low and the concentration is higher, even though overall pounds loading is down. This is our concentration for the last year of our chlorides. The gray line on the bottom is the limit where we need to be at for a monthly average of 261. The The yellow line is the daily max that we can be at. As you see, our effluent is always higher, and that's due to that addition of ferric chloride into the system to remove the phosphorus. Next slide. And I was saying that the mass limit the mass is actually showing a reduction. This is a graph since 2015 of the millions of pounds of chlorides we've been adding in our discharge. You can see since 21, when the water plant went online, the numbers have dropped. Even in 22, even though we saw the concentrations really not lower, we've seen the mass loading, the number of pounds leaving the plant has gone down. And as of 2023 now to date, you can see it's continuing to drop with the work that we're doing with our the chloride reduction program that we have in place. And the actions that we've taken so far, the City of Marshall and MMU received a $7 million grant and shared the remaining cost to upgrade the water plant to both lime and soda ash softening. In the spring of 2021, the water plant was producing water at 8 grains of hardness, a reduction from approximately 35 grains. For the water plant enhancing softening project to succeed, water softeners in Marshall need to be adjusted to 8 grains of hardness and have the salt dosage adjusted down to achieve a higher salt efficiency. Participants have seen cost savings by purchasing less salt without any reduction in the water softness that they're experiencing. More actions we've taken in the spring of 22, the City of Marshall received a grant from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the Environment and Natural Resource Trust Fund to offer free water softener optimizations and rebates to help adjust or replace old inefficient water softeners. The program does run for one more year, and there's still $65,000 remaining in that grant. Residents, businesses, and industries are eligible to apply. We've utilized all forms of advertising for the program: direct mailings, radio ads, newspaper ads, social media ads, utility bill flyers, and chamber newsletter articles. In the discussions we've had with the PCA, we requested an extension to our schedule of compliance, and they informed us that we would need to apply for a variance instead of extending that. They said they can't legally extend it because it is written in our permit that April 1, 2024 is our deadline to meet the limit. A variance application is not guaranteed to be approved. The EPA will need to agree to this as well. The prior work that's been completed, the Water Plant Enhanced Softening Project, the MPCA grant program, and city-initiated public education campaign has ensured our eligibility and enhanced our case for a variance. If the city is not granted a variance, the city may have to implement more drastic measures regarding water softeners.
As an overview, phosphorus, city staff is requesting a 10-year schedule compliance from the MPCA to provide more time to identify wastewater treatment facility process improvements to ensure consistent compliance with the new limit. Sulfates, city staff is requesting a 15-year schedule compliance from the MPCA to offer more time to further study and possibly partner with local industry to reduce sulfate concentration in the effluent stream. Chlorides, city staff is recommending that the city applies for variance to provide more time to work with the community and local industries to reduce chloride discharge. And we're up for any questions. If anybody has something like to ask.
Greg?
Yeah. On the phosphorus, isn't the phosphorus more of an issue based on mass load than it is concentration in the receiving stream?
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, obviously, I know you guys in Bolton and Mink have had the conversation with MPCA regarding the obvious improvements to mass loading and continuing, and then just that we're suffering the higher concentrations based on low flow, but it made substantial improvements. Are we getting acknowledgement on that when you're reviewing this? I mean, do you feel them moving at all in our favor on that?
Well, our main issue is with the lower limits, like Scott mentioned, when we precipitate out the phosphorus with ferric sludge, it's a fine particle. Some of those particles don't settle well, they escape to our effluent filters. The traveling bridge effluent filters that were built in 2002 don't have the bed depth that are necessary. The technology isn't available in those to fully capture all the solids that are needed to get to the lower limits. A lot of the filters now they're doing are cloth filters, so there's different technologies out there. But back in 2002, they were a great filter, and they've run
Right.
well for us, but they just can't get to that lower limit
Right.
of the mass.
But, I mean, we're still done I think a pretty good job on it, so but you don't see any budge in their limit?
They're pretty adamant that that number is the number we're gonna get. It's based on the Minnesota River and the Redwood River, both.
But it's based on mass, though, not on concentration, correct?
Correct.
Their
But they've
stream load
allotted-
study is on mass.
Right, but they've allotted a certain amount of phosphorus that can go into the river, and then they've divided that up amongst all of the point sources
Okay.
in the watershed, and we get a certain amount of that. So even though we've reduced it a lot, June through September, we need to be reducing it a
Okay.
little bit more.
But that's based on concentration.
No, it is based on mass. It's 13.3 kilograms per
Yeah.
day.
Okay,
And
all
right
right.
now, our average for the year is 13.6 kilograms per day. So we
Okay.
can get there, but not consistently.
Got it,
Can't
okay.
guarantee we're gonna get there
All
all
right.
the time.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? So the only action item that you need from the county is the application for the variance.
Correct.
So, and then the others are just the request as the permit applicant, right?
Correct. We'd have to have you sign application for the variance, and there's no fee for that, for the chloride variance.
So is there any objection for the application for the variance?
I move approval to authorize execution of the chloride variance application to the MPCA.
Motion by Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Jim. Discussion? Not. We'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. Motion passes. Before you leave, this has been roughly a 2-year process that you've been involved with since first getting the notice of the application review, I believe, so.
Correct. We got it last April, and we've been working on it back and forth at the MPCA, and Bolton and Mink is helping us. We're members of MESRB, so we get their input on it too, so.
Good.
It's a lot of discussion. We were told it's one of the more complicated permits that's out there right now. Main reason for that is the Red River is a small stream, so that kind of plays in.
And we're the big player on it, and for our
Yeah.
population, general population, we've got a large fraction of industry, and the industry's done a stellar job, but
Yep.
it really creates a unique problem, and my hat's off to the work you guys do out at the
Thank
wastewater plant. You people are stars.
Thank you.
And the second thing is unrelated to the permit, but you are hosting, I believe, tomorrow, the Water and Wastewater Operators Regional Conference in
Yep,
Marshall.
it's a rural
It's a
water.
Minnesota Rural Water
Oh, okay.
Conference, yeah.
So,
That's the drinking water side, but they all play in the same water.
But they do wastewater too.
They
so-
do, yeah.
right. So,
Training.
thank you for your work in hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move then to agenda item number 13. This would be council, or consider appointments to various boards, commissions, bureaus, and authorities. Earlier this evening, the council did meet in special session, interviewed applicants for various boards and commissions, and based on those interviews at that special meeting, I would recommend that Amber Kinner Alacon be appointed to a term on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission that will expire May 31st, 2025, that Jim McClinsky be appointed to a second term on the Planning Commission. That term will expire May 31st, 2025, and that Dean Knutson be appointed to a second term on the Public Housing Commission. That term expires May 31st, 2028. Offer that as a recommendation to the council and entertain a motion to affirm.
So move.
Motion by John,
I'll second it.
seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to Commission Board Liaison Reports. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Airport Commission met last week and discussed a number of topics. One of them will come in front of the council maybe at some point in the future, is the maintenance facility bids, our bid. And then one of the other things that came up that was, I think, an interesting conversation, it was good to note, was about the rental on hangars. And I thought it was kind of a fun conversation. There was good input from two of the people that were at the meeting are actually participate as either FBO, the base operator there, or a long-term renter. And it isn't about the price. It was the fact that the city did such a great job of not raising rent for a long time that when the Ways and Means actually raised the rates, what was it, a 10-year jump, Jason? 8 or 10 years?
We hadn't raised rates for almost 20 years.
Okay, yeah, and I knew the number was, because, yeah, that makes sense, because I think it was an average of 3% per year, and they hit them all with it at one time. And well, just think of the 20 years of bonuses you guys got, no charge, so. But it was an interesting discussion, but a good group of people on that airport commission, and it was good conversation, and there's a lot of energy there, and be looking forward to hearing more from the consultant about where things went and where they're going on the bid. So more to follow on that at some point. That's all I have.
Okay, Amanda?
Public Housing Commission met yesterday. Not a lot to discuss. They did approve a resolution for an amended lease, unit deposits and ceiling rents. That was the biggest thing.
Okay. The Southwest Regional Development Commission will meet this Thursday. The Area Transportation Partnership did meet on this past Friday and approved the 5-year state and federal funding plan for District 8. The Fire Relief Association Board of Trustees will have their quarterly meeting next Tuesday morning. John?
Nothing.
See?
The DEI Commission approved a couple marketing items for World Fest. So if you don't have anything going on this weekend, this Saturday, April 15th, from 12 to 6 over at the Red Baron, they will be having the World Fest. And DEI will have a table there, so come see us. Talked about World Cafe, the results from the community survey. So they kind of came up with some action items, how to move forward with disseminating the results as well, too. We are also working a lot with providing translation for materials that are going out. And one of the ideas was, usually you have QR codes on flyers and things like that. So having individuals scan it is one of the dilemmas with having it translated, is that not a lot of the visuals can even read in their own native language because they didn't go to school. And so having videos, maybe, working with Alex over at Studio One and creating a verbal version of the flyer so that the individuals in our community they all get a fair opportunity of receiving the information in the way that they can receive it. And then Welcoming Week has been scheduled for Tuesday, September 19th at Justice Park. And the League of Minnesota, Cities is really impressed by our Cultures in the Prairie event. So they are letting us host the race equity cohort this year at the Red Baron Center. So a few of us did participate in that a few years ago. So really excited about that. And then the library, Michelle did provide us with the outreach estimate for the person that goes to the daycares and the nursing homes. So she did provide us with an estimate. Ideally, it would not get implemented until another, probably 3-4 months, probably this fall. And that wouldn't be a lot of time. And then, so it might come to the council, but it might be something too that we could wait until next year and they could put it into their budget. The annual report was shared. Their Friends book store that they have at the library there raised over $6,000 this past month. And usually they just average about a few $100s, so they're really excited about that. And they received some really large sums of memorials. And so they are going to possibly do just a little renovation in the nonfiction area because it's not big enough. And in the kids area, I don't know if you've been there before, but they have that big island. And so kids aren't supposed to climb in it, but so they're kind of tired of yelling kids to get down. And the material has been deteriorating, so they're going to get rid of that and have a clear sight line with the books. And so when you come in there, you can see so that, you don't have teenagers hiding or things like that. So really exciting things happening over the library. That's all I have.
Thank you. Jim?
I can't follow that up, so I have nothing.
Move then to council member individual items. Craig?
Yeah, just one thing though, with the, thank goodness, warm weather and the snow is thawing. And of course, that shows us the sins of winter in the yards. And I know that one of the hot subjects has been rental ordinance. And a lot of landlords are wondering, why would we do that? Well, if you're a landlord and you have rental property in Marshall and you haven't driven around and looked at it, you maybe should. Because some of them look like garbage dumps. And it's disgusting. And it's been there a while. Now, granted, it might have been hidden by snow, but if you're a landlord, get a look at your property. If you're a property manager for an absentee landlord, you better get out and look at the property, because I'm going to be calling the city hall and myself and making some complaints. And I know that's what it takes. That's what the city does. We don't go out as city staff. We don't have them out there looking for these, so people have to report them. Well, as disgusting as some of these are, I'm not going to ask my neighbors to get mad enough that they report it. I'm going to take it upon myself this year and I'm going to report it. So I don't mean to sound like a bully, but it's disgusting and neighbors shouldn't have to look at it. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Amanda?
I don't have anything.
Jim?
I don't want to be as harsh as Craig, because I agree with you, Craig, but I don't disagree at all. But I do, there's the holiday fest we have at the park. I'd encourage folks that have stuff out there, get it cleaned out of our park, because it's nice how people are walking through the park, and it just needs to be done. It's a good organization. They do a good job, but it needs to be cleaned up now.
Yeah, I know they were working out there this morning, and it's amazing the number of extension cords that have to be wound up.
Yeah, but it's time for it to go away. That's all I have. Oh, I have one more thing. With the nights out, watch for kids. I watched those tykesters scoot by. Not that I wasn't paying attention to you, Bob, but I noticed a few bikers go by and walkers. For those of us driving, pay attention. People are out walking and biking and running rapidly through the neighborhoods, which is very good.
See?
I don't have anything.
John? Earlier, when we were discussing the property for the potential relocation and construction of the aquatic center, there was reference to the contingencies on the sales tax extension. So the status of this legislatively is, as the council does know, that there's been several hearings in front of the Senate Tax Committee that we've been involved in. The Senate Tax Committee has included our project, as well as others, in the bill that is laid over for inclusion in the tax bill. The House Tax Committee chair has chosen not to hold any hearings, so the result is that it will end up getting resolved in the conference committee, which will likely be reported out in perhaps one of the last items on the legislative, before the legislature adjourns, and I believe that is on May 20th. So we're in the Senate. We're not in, because no proposal is in on the House at this point. Of course, that can change, but at least that's where we're at right now.
I have a question on that, Bob. You had mentioned the first Tuesday in November. Is that 2023 or 2024? If it would happen to get out of commission and get approved.
The way that it was proposed and it was laid over into the tax bill is that the election would be November 2023. So if that holds, that holds. So,
okay, thank you.
Yep. With that, we'll move then to staff reports. Sharon?
Mr. Mayor and council members, just a follow-up on rental code. We have been working with staff on an online application process for the rental code kind of work group committee. I know the mayor mentioned this several weeks ago about the makeup of that committee. So it's likely we're probably going to release the application period. We'll do a press release or something, some kind of notification so people know that they can apply for it. I know the mayor has consideration of co-chairs, and there'll eventually be consideration of council representation because the proposal included 2 council members on that as well. And we talked a little bit today at staff as well about some remedies to some existing violations. And for Councilmember Schaefer, I'm going to talk to you tomorrow a little bit about that. And I know you have some experience from your previous employer on some enforcement procedures. So just want to follow up on that. Do want to comment a little bit on Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Commission work. There was discussion about a youth commission representative, and I believe the recommendation was to consider a youth commission advisory or a youth advisory commission. And we do have staff that's working on language that'll come forward to L&O. We also want our city attorney to review that in addition to the work that staff is doing. And the parent of the one applicant was aware and was notified that that's what we're working on. So I wanted to follow up on that. And just a quick follow-up on Community Services Advisory Commission. We had our meeting in, I think it was last week. We have a lot of new members on the advisory board for community services. So we had all staff present who gave an update to the advisory board. We also presented an update on the Aquatic Center. And the next meeting and future meetings, which we only meet 5 times out of the year right now, we really kind of maybe want to make that commission give some input on some of our park projects and some of our recreation programming. It's mainly been just kind of updating them, but we'd also like to get some feedback from them. So when we come forward to council for certain action items, we have the buy-in and support of the Community Services Advisory Board. One other thing I'll mention about community services, we're coming up on a really busy time, not only because it's getting nice out now, but there'll be our summer brochure will come out, and it'll come out the first week in May. And it will be mailed to every resident in the city of Marshall. I think it was actually done last summer that way. Some of the seasonal brochures were not mailed. There was an online version, but we're looking at making them be in the hands of our residents with a physical copy going forward. Does mean some budget additions because it wasn't planned for, but we think it'll also in turn increase our registration for community ed and recreation. So we're kind of getting ready for the onslaught of people registering for that. So that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Any questions for Sharon? Jason?
I'll just share with the council that the downtown reconstruction project will kick off in earnest next week on Monday. RNG Construction plans to start by closing North 3rd Street from Main to Redwood, and that'll be closed, I'll say indefinitely for numerous weeks and probably a couple months even to get that part of the project wrapped up before they go into other areas in the project. So we encourage people to park on Lion Street or the other city parking lots downtown as they patronize the businesses on North 3rd Street. We'll work with RNG Construction to ensure that businesses have access through the sidewalk network to the maximum extent that we can. And we'll be meeting with the businesses on the project weekly as well, just to make sure we're visible and present and can take their concerns. So I think that's all I've got to share. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
Jason, we visited about this prior to the meeting, but can we talk a little bit about the post office drop boxes? Certainly they will be impacted by the reconstruction of Third Street, but they already are an issue of, that many people have talked about when they're relocated to the alley. It's certainly an awkward location. People have to drive on the wrong side of the alley to drop off mail on either side, and they're located adjacent to the neighboring property, which is the church, and so there's a lot of extra traffic on that alley behind the church, and of course with extra traffic in this season now, it's all deteriorated, and it's it's a mess back there. So is there any, not that you have a solution right now, but can we talk to the post office about, is there a better plan for those blue drop-off boxes? I don't believe they have to be located adjacent to the post office, but maybe there's a more convenient and safe place where they could be that wouldn't destroy the alley behind the church.
Yeah, sure. City staff can certainly reach out to the postmaster and try to have some conversations about that and what their thoughts are on how it's been working out and where we could look to help them move to if that's something they want to consider. The alley condition isn't great. The street department will patch it as we can to help keep it in a usable condition. During the project, for the time period now, we will be signing people to access the alley off of North 4th Street, to use the alley to access the drop boxes and then carry on through the project zone out to College Drive. So there is going to be a way to access it for now, but we can certainly reach out and talk to them about long-term plans.
Okay. Any other questions for Jason? Okay, Pam?
Nothing for me.
So we'll move then to the remaining items on the agenda, which includes the administrative brief, where the council can review that, as well as the cash and investment reports, the building permits, which are active this time of year, and the listing of upcoming meetings. Is there any other item to come forward at this meeting? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Amanda, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John, discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm glad you're watching Councilman Meister.
Good. With that, I will move us to a vote on the motion to adjourn. I will close the voting. And the motion does pass. We are adjourned.